It's finally time to talk about what happened in part 2 of the first season of Spy Family. I reviewed the first part on this channel a while ago, and if you saw it, you know I have some issues about how Yor's character was used. I still have those issues and I'll touch on them a little bit, but you can get a more in-depth views of these flaws in the first video. The link is in the description. This season was mostly very enjoyable. There were a few frustrations here and there, but overall it's still a pretty unique anime that makes your heart melt. We started this part with the introduction of a new family member, Bond, the family pet. This dog can see into the future because he was experimented on just like Anya, and he was involved in a terrorist plot where he, alongside other smart dogs, would be used to blow up certain political figures. The plot was very interesting, captivating, and surprisingly humorous right off the bat. There were just some parts that were so ridiculous that you had to find funny, like Lloyd's bathroom issues, Bond and Anya getting lost and running in circles, and Anya writing a crude message in fake blood. Twilight should have been able to recognize the handwriting since he's a spy and part of his job is to be super observant, but I was able to suspend my disbelief for the comedy. This Doggy Crisis Arc was definitely a good way to start because it grabs your attention and doesn't let go. I feared for the well-being of the Forger family, especially when I saw the future prediction of Twilight's corpse. His only hope for survival was the ragtag duo consisting of a little girl and a dog, but they pulled through in hilarious fashion. In hindsight, it was a very simple arc, but it was a lot of fun and a great way to bring back the series. Bond was added to the family, and as much as I do love his addition, he doesn't really add much to the story outside of this arc. Hopefully he gets more focus and involvement in the future, but only time will tell. When watching this part, I noticed a huge problem that wasn't as obvious in the last part. Filler. Now what is filler? Because there are multiple definitions floating around. The one I usually follow is when the anime creates something new without the input of the mangaka, basically the opposite of canon. But with the rise of what some people call anime canon, I amended my understanding of filler to be anytime the anime deviates from the manga, because you can't tell me anime canon isn't filler. But after watching Spy Family, my understanding of filler has begun to change yet again to anything that does not aid the progression of the story, as there were so many storylines that in the end changed absolutely nothing in the grand scheme of things. I've heard arguments that the progression of the story is the Forger family bond rather than Operation Strix, so a lot of the smaller campy events are actually vital to the story. While I do agree with that interpretation, there were still many events that actually add little to no value to that family bond. For example, in the episode where Yor is trying to cook, titled Yor's Kitchen, nothing really changed. By the end of it, she was able to make one dish that tasted amazing, but every other dish she attempted to make was still terrible, and her cooking skills didn't really improve much. We didn't learn much about her past other than when her mom was in her life, she made the same dish Yor learned how to make. Since the bond between the Forgers wasn't deepened in any significant way, and barely anything changed in regards to Yor's cooking abilities, this is an episode I would categorize as filler. The episode was especially disappointing as there was a bit of misdirection at the beginning where it seemed as if Yor was going to get some focus on her assassin work, but instead we got this random cooking episode. Looking at this in the most charitable way possible, the only bond that changed or developed in this part was the one between Yor and Camilla, but seeing as she's a very minor character, that's probably not going to go anywhere anytime soon. The second part of the episode, the informant's great romance plan, actually appeals more to the second definition of filler I mentioned earlier, a deviation from the manga, as it was adapted from an extra chapter rather than a main one. Since it wasn't a main chapter, that means you could skip it and little to nothing about your understanding of this story as a whole would really change. However, despite this being more fillery than the first part of the episode, it was so much more enjoyable because at the end it tied us back to one of the main themes of the show, the difficulty of living without love. Not to mention it deepened the connection between Twilight and Frankie, which meant a lot because although Frankie is a minor side character, he appears in the series pretty frequently and it's nice to get more development from him. Another part which expanded on character bonds pretty well was the whole carry out the Griffin plan art project episode. Anya wanted to help Damien with his art project to get closer to him and his father, but by the end it seemed as if she just genuinely wanted to help him. While it's difficult to point to a specific way their bond deepened, you get the sense that their relationship is slowly changing. I had problems with the whole Midterm Exams Arc because in the end, nothing changed. Anya studied as hard as she could, but in the end only got grades barely good enough to pass. She got no Torrance votes nor Stella Star, stars. Her situation is the exact same as it was prior to the exams. This filler makes the story stagnate, which ruins what otherwise could have been a more interesting story. It could have been so much more interesting if Yuri found a way to connect to Anya as a tutor and make her extremely well prepared for the test. Not only would this deepen the bond between these two characters, but there would also be more reason for Yuri to be included in this story, as he would be the only one who knows how to help Anya academically. And it would have been undeniably cool if this bond between uncle and niece actually led to Anya earning an additional Stella star and moving the story forward. These missed opportunities for major story progression and bonding make it seem as though nothing is really happening, and that is why I have no issues labeling this as filler. The best part of the entire season was the Campbelldon Tennis Arc, because it was able to blend humor with the seriousness of a dangerous spy mission almost perfectly. It sort of fell off at the end, but I'll touch on that later. Fiona Frost, aka Nightfall's introduction, was amazing. Her trope of being a super stoic woman who secretly has a really girly feelings of love is probably one of my favorite character tropes at the moment. She brought some intriguing conflict into the Forger household, as her whole mission was essentially to be a homewrecker. Both Yor and Anya felt as if there was a threat that the mother of the Forger household could be replaced by someone who Lloyd may actually like more. But while this was some of the most interesting conflict, it ended in such a weak way. The Lloyd-Yor date was very wholesome, and it seems as if they became closer and deepened their bond that night. However, none of that really mattered because Yor forgot everything the next morning, so it was like that bonding didn't even happen. Lloyd supposedly re-explained everything the next day, but it still does not feel the same. We were able to experience the moment they had on their date, but realistically, we don't know how much Lloyd conveyed to Yor about that night. He probably left some stuff out, like attempting the honey trap, and that just cheapens the date overall. But that aside, the tennis tournament aspect of this arc was definitely the best. It subverted expectations in the best way possible with the inclusion of an underground tennis tournament. I expected something like underground boxing, as that is what underground events are usually depicted as. It makes sense that people would pay to see two people beat each other up with less regulation because it's more thrilling. So the idea of applying that to tennis was just so ridiculous that it was hilarious. It was a silly concept, but these characters took everything so seriously, which made it easier for me to take it seriously as well. The tennis matches were so cool, especially the last one against the Campbell siblings. Twilight and Nightfall demonstrated how adaptable they were to learning new things as spies, since they were able to quickly pick up and master the art of tennis. The only thing about this arc that wasn't satisfactory was the ending with the true meaning of the secret code on the painting. The fact that it wasn't some huge thing that could bring war back to the West made the entire arc pointless. Not only that, but it took focus away from Operation Strix, meaning the entire thing was basically filler. Absolutely nothing changed from the events of this arc, and everything is just going to go back to the way things were. It was such a bad ending that it somewhat ruined my perception on the absolute perfect arc that led up to that dumb reveal. Because now whenever I go to rewatch this, I'm going to be thinking, why is it using a couple of their best agents for a mission that doesn't even matter? The last part, the beginning of the Imperial Scholars arc, was actually a pretty good way to end off the season. It started with the Anya becking shopping episode, which was really cute and wholesome. The only thing that ruined it for me was how weird some people were being about it online, but that's not a fault with the show. It's the fault of a toxic fan base with some illegal preferences. It's not even most of the fans, to be honest. It's just the loud minority. But them aside, this episode was so great because we got to see Anya and Becky's friendship grow so much stronger. What made it a little extra wholesome was the fact that Becky doesn't usually open up to people, so this was a first for the both of them. It was easy to tell that even though Becky looked full of confidence, she was very insecure about whether or not Anya was having a good time shopping with her. Their bond will probably only continue to grow, and it's one of the most beautiful things to see. Lord Forger has finally made contact with Donovan Desmond. Of everything to happen in this part, this singular event felt like the biggest step forward in terms of plot progression. It was a very brief interaction, but Lloyd calculated every talking point to make sure he left a good impression. I felt bad for Damien, as Lloyd stole his chance to interact with his father, but I also felt happy for him in a way. I know telling your kid to keep working hard as to not shame the Desmond name doesn't sound like the best parenting, but I believe it's Donovan's way of showing he cares. It's like he is saying that Damien is so important that it is actually possible for him to shame the Desmond name, and he is proud of his son for doing the best he can academically. This meeting was the perfect way to end the season because it built up my excitement for the future of both the Forger family and Operation Strix. Overall, this anime has definitely been a fun and unique experience. My only major complaint right now is that there were a lot of mini stories that were very unnecessary. I didn't even talk about one of the worst ones with that George dude who thought he was going to be dropping out of Eden Academy. He's probably not going to be important for the story moving forward, as he was only really relevant for a completely random side episode. This anime would feel so much better if the plot felt like it was moving at a bit of a quicker pace. It was doing amazing in the first half as Lloyd quickly assembled a family by adopting Anya and marrying Yor. Then they got Anya into Eden Academy and she earned a Stella Star along with a couple of Tonitrus bolts. This story was quickly moving, but now it's as if it stopped and we aren't making too much progress anymore. It seems like Spy Family is going for a sitcom kind of feel, but it's definitely possible for it to do that while having a progressive story. These things aren't mutually exclusive. For example, one of my favorite sitcoms, The Good Place, had a very good balance by changing relationships between characters, the environment, and the major struggles with every couple of episodes. My hope is that with the next season of Spy Family, we get more major changes between the relationships and the dynamics of these characters. Like maybe Lloyd finds out about Yor's assassin work, or maybe she finds out about his spy work. It would just be interesting to see if some of these secrets got out, as it would shake things up and it could change Operation Strix. I guess we'll have to wait sometime later this year when season 2 airs.